Gayatri Mahamantra with your back straight, both hands on your laps, left beneath the right, contemplative mood. Om Bhurabhuvah Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonah Prachodayat. Invocation of the Divine Master Adi Guru Muni Vedyas. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Deva Sakshat Par Brahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha, Akhand Mandalakaram, Vyaptam Yena Characharam, Tatpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha, Om Shri Guruve Namaha, व्यासरूपेण आवाहयामि स्थापयामि ध्यायामि पूजयामि ततो नमस्कारं करोमि. Shrimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, Akshar Brahma Yoga, Shlok number 28, the final Shlok of the corresponding chapter. Beyond this, chapter 9, that is Raj Yoga, Guhya Yoga. Raj Yoga, the one which can be equated with the national highway, a yoga as comfortable as the national highway, Guhya Yoga, and esoteric yoga. So that will start from the next class. Today, the chapter culminates with the term Purnahuti. And before I come down to the last verse, it's a moment for us to reiterate the mentioning of the first two verses with whom the chapter started. There were primarily 7 questions raised by the timeless seeker from his timeless mentor, Arjuna from Krishna. And those 7 questions were the foremost, and there was another question, the eighth one, which was a sort of an annexure annexed along with it. As Adiguru Shankaracharya has recognized them as 7 plus 1, so we go accordingly 7 plus 1. And the questions, as they are being displayed before you in the slide, the, the seeker wanted to know what is Brahma, what is Adhyatmam, what is Karma, what is Adhibhutam, what is Adhidaivam, what is Adhiyagya, and where does the being transcend? Where is it within the human manifestation? Where does it exist? And after leaving the mortal plane, what happens to the being? So, this was the last question, the eighth one. So, the entire chapter started unfolding with these 7 questions. And the journey furthered, as we noticed, not only that these questions were answered, but before the chapter was about to culminate, in the last couple of verses, there was a very special mention to north summer solstice and winter solstice. When the journey is northward or southward, those that leave this mortal plane, that is when they die, if it is summer solstice, they do not come back. They relinquish from the entrapment of the cycle of birth and death. And those that leave this mortal plane during winter solstice, thickly speaking, July to December, they have to reincarnate. And these lines were in the light of a yogi and not a common person. They were meant for a yogi, one who has already embarked upon spiritual pursuit with all seriousness and sincerity and has been able to excel to such levels that when he departed, when he or she, I would term it as it, let the soul be termed as it, when it departed, it was summer solstice and it bailed out of the entrapments of the cycle of birth and death, emancipated. Whereas, on the other hand, when a yogi who beheld certain cravings, yearnings, seekings of this mortal plane wanted little more sensorial pleasure for itself, then had to come back again to complete the journey, to exhaust all those seekings and yearnings and cravings, and then further for the final emancipation. And in between, there are certain souls that do transcend into different celestial planes to exhaust their karma or their seeking there, and then come back again to Mrityulok, that is Prithvi, for the final plunge towards emancipation. So the northward and southward were understood, thickly speaking, like that, whereas we also understood an esoteric understanding, which is the real current beneath the mentioning of summer solstice and winter solstice, the northward movement and the southward movement. It does not merely correspond to the movement of the sun, it has to do something with the prana. When the prana ascends, let it be considered as northbound. And when prana descends, let it be understood as southbound. So, a summer solstice for the evolution of a soul is when its prana is ascending upwards. When does the prana ascend upwards? When the prana is balanced, when the prana is in harmony, when the prana has been relieved from all of its entanglements and engagements that seek out to cherish sensorial pleasures of one or the other kind. And when is the prana entangled? When the movement is southward. When is its movement southward? When the entire prana is exhausted for the expenditure into the realization of the desires, craving, expectations of different kinds from this life. All that which this mortal plane can hold you are all your cravings and yearnings. So then the prana, it gets exhausted as an to expend, because it's a fuel. Prana is a fuel. Without spending fuel, can you move? No, no motion without fuel. So the prana becomes the source of motion, the fuel, in order to cherish different kinds of yearnings and cravings. Not necessary that you may be able to cherish them in real. Real means in actual. It may also happen that you are cherishing them only at your imaginative end. Even then, the prana is being spent, prana is not saved. For example, if you have a yearning within to have a palatial bungalow, etc., I'm just giving an example to approximate, but you do not have that capacity, eligibility to have one. But every single day, you keep on imagining about that, you keep on contemplating upon that, and you go on watching it as an imaginative hallucination during the even during the daytime. So, what is being done? Prana is being spent. Without spending prana, can you experience hallucination? Can you undergo an imagination? Nothing can happen upon this mental plane without the expenditure of prana. That is why they say that who spends the most? The stupid brain, idiot brain spends the most. Most for its different dispensation, be it thought, imagination, whatever, contemplation, whatever. So the prana descends when it is spent into, it is exhausted into certain avenues that entangle you to this mortal plane. And prana ascends when it is relieved from all such dispensation, and in harmony, one pointed, it moves upward towards the cerebrum. So, having understood that as the northbound journey of summer solstice and the southbound journey of winter solstice, we now come to the last verse, which is a culmination, which wants to make a mention before the seeker, Arjuna. Look, Arjuna, in order to purify yourself, in order to become capacitated to raise your eligibility, all such exercises are done. Like, now let's have the verse before us. It says, Vedeshu yaggeshu tapahasu cha eva daneshu yat punya phalam pradishtam. You undergo the study of the scriptures, you offer oblations, you undergo austerities of different kind, you are benevolent, you offer offerings to the needy or for other kinds of upliftments, and the outcome of all of them, whatever has been informed, will certainly come to you. There's no doubt about that. But that again shall engage you, because the outcome, if it is, even if it is good, you have to come back again to reincarnate in order to then benefit of that outcome, to realize, to cherish that outcome. That is why probably Nishkam Karma is always instigated time and again through different modes and mentions in Bhagavad Gita, so that you are relinquished from any outcome, whether it is good. Of course, bad is relieved much earlier. Even the good outcome does not come to entrap you. So, goodness or badness, nothing. Absolute neutrality is the highest detachment that a being must be able to develop, and which is not easy. And here in the verse, it says, Atyeti. You really leap out, you bail out, you jump out, you relinquish. By one who knows this secret, one who knows this secret, then shall be able to land itself into the highest abode of that Almighty Adyam. Adyam means one which is primordial, the primordial state before a being separated from that ultimate. It was in that spell of the Almighty itself. But the moment it got separated, that was the moment when its journey as a being started. Going back to that primeval state, the primordial state, has been termed here as Adyam. So the highest abode is going back to the same state where from everything started. That means becoming and gathering that blissfulness once again, becoming it, becoming that supreme, it merging into supreme. Although, although, while I say that, I also understand that those great exalted souls that acquire the status of being declared as merged into the Supreme Being, yet retain a prerogative at their will to manifest in service to the mandate of the Mahakal, whenever, wherever required, in whatever form. Does that mean that the dissolution was not absolute? Well, I'm not capacitated to go and stretch my explanation beyond this limit, because I have not experienced it. What all in the capacity of a small teacher I know is through various understandings that are thoroughly drawn from the mentions of the exalted ones or other great learned ones. So, but I know at my own end, as we all have experienced it, that yes, the exalted ones, though considered as almost like a Brahma, pervaded into Brahma, Brahma, all pervasive one, becomes their absolute existence, yet there is a prerogative through which they manifest time and again to serve the will of the cosmic mind, the Brahma. Probably that is why Krishna has made a mention yada dayahi. Now you know the rest of this shloka. So whenever the manifestation happens, manifestation of divinity in its consolidated form, it is for the service of the will of the mandate of the cosmic mind, Brahma. So having said so, this last verse gives an understanding to the yogi that the outcome of each and everything that you have struggled, slogged through your spiritual pursuit, all this certainly shall bring a result. But at the same time, understand it that it stands no comparison, not even an infinitesimal portion, when compared to that highest abode of that submerged, that merging into the supreme, the ultimate. So, having that understood, the last verse in Bhagavad Gita generally lays down the foundation for the next chapter. And I believe that the next chapter, when it shall start unfolding, will certainly gather its threads from the last verse of this chapter. And that's how the Raja Yoga and Guhya Yoga shall come and open before us. Having said so, since this is the session which culminates the chapter, the Purnahuti, let me make a mention and reiteration once again that the understanding and study of scriptures of this kind, like Bhagavad Gita, which no doubt, I hold no doubt, is a divine utterance. It's a divine whisper. It's a divine intuit which comes from the timeless master, timeless mentor to his timeless seeker Arjuna. And in order to imbibe its essence, let it get assimilated into our own existence. And it is therefore that we conduct merely 2 sessions in a month, because it's not about merely reading the shloka, understanding the meaning of those Sanskrit terms in our own comfortable language like Hindi or English or something else, but to allow it to percolate into our existence. You may have a reason to say over here, a valid reason. We are not able to recall all those verses that we have studied so far. Even till chapter 8, we have studied hundreds of verses. You are absolutely right about that. Even I don't remember all of them. I can't recall, except few, barring few, which probably held some prominence within my own insight and were able to get entangled. I may be able to recall very few of them, but not all of them. So, does that mean that all that I today appear to be oblivion about hold no count for my evolution? No, it is not so. It's not so. Anything and everything that we emanate into the sky, be it in the form of any eminent of the material, whether good or bad, a contaminant, a pollution, or something like a Havan Samagri, as offered as an oblation, they have the role to play in the sky. May not be directly visible, but it has its role to play, and we very well know it today. We very well know it today. How it matters when we emanate something into the sky, we release it in the sky, that matters. Likewise, is the thought, the kinds of thoughts that we release into the sky, into the subtle dimension, have their impact. So it's not only pollution of air, it's about thought pollution as well. Similarly, when we undergo the studies of the scripture, silently, unnoticed, there is a process of transmutation which transpires within our own existence. Absolutely unnoticeable. We cannot decipher the contribution of any particular verse that may have accrued to evolve our insight. But the total sum is that yes, we evolve at the end of our own insight. We evolve at the end of our perceptory ends. And yes, the kind of insight we bear towards subjects, people, and situations, probably before we had this kind of a bent developed towards understanding scripture, is now changed, is now mature, groomed. How did it happen? When did it happen? It happened the same way as the milk becomes the curd. Likewise, we continuously kept associated with we remained associated with the understanding of the scripture. We may have heard it even for once, but its contribution cannot be denied. It may have contributed a small grain of sand when it comes to, say, for example, we are trying to erect an edifice within ourselves of detachment. Instead of brick, we were contributing the granules of sand. But yes, those granules of sand also matter. And that's what the significance of a squirrel in Ramayana, how even a grain of sand matters, and it matters not only outward but inward as well. All those, all that attendance that you, me, anyone else may have afforded to experience these kind of scriptures has a tangible contribution when it comes to evolve, when it comes to grow within. We certainly have grown within, and it has given us a very big contribution. Having said so, I culminate this class and hope to see you in the next class when we embark upon the next chapter. Till then, Om Hi Satya Hai, Om Hi Satya Hai, Om Hi सत्य है।